everyone, and huge shout out as well to everyone who's joining us virtually as well. Can't forget you guys who are joining virtually. I know some of my team are on as well, so I wanted to make sure I say hi. My name is Joy, part of the MeltCX team. I look after strategy and development globally for the business. A little bit about Melt as well. We've been a strong ecosystem partner, I hope, with the Meraki team. And what we do essentially is to deliver AI use cases that people thought were never possible, but we make possible on Meraki. So MeltCX actually stands for melding the customer experience. And to Charles' point as well, I think I was set in on his conversation. He said, making sure that whatever you deliver is outcome-based and outcome-focused. And that's what we do with our customers. We work with a large range of partners as well. You can see on screen up there, front and center, Cisco Meraki. We also work with the likes of Google, Intel, and Microsoft as well. And we've got our channel partners too. So I think the topic of smart spaces we've talked a lot about as well. We're really keen on smart spaces. I think one thing for us is to make a space smart. Is to really make sense of the space. And that's what we do, and that's what we're passionate about as well. It's all about, making sense of the space, providing a platform for people to understand the analytics of that space, and surface them up into dashboards so that it's really consumable and all leads to a specific outcome for customers after. So essentially what we do is to be able to give customers the opportunity to track physical spaces like they would a website. So that's what we do.
I like the alignment to website because it really makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've been working really closely together on a range of different problems for our customers across the region and globally.
Yeah.
I guess the way in which you actually present a lot of that data is using your platform called Viana.
That's
I was wondering, would you be able to share Viana with the audience today?
Definitely. So Viana is the product that we've been working really closely on. It's really an end-to-end platform. It's up on screen as well. We've built an end-to-end platform that's all about helping organizations maximize understanding of the space, visualize data through actionable insights, and help hit their objectives and outcomes as to why they're having, and using that AI use case. So we'll talk a little bit about some customers. It's actually a joint customer that we've worked on based in Australia. So we'll be sharing a little bit on that. Please feel free as well to come outside our booth and, like James said, have a deeper conversation with us. We'll go through a demo after, but, we'll love to have more conversations with you guys.
Definitely. So on the topic of Viana, I guess if we think about some of the customers that we've been working with, the problems are wide and varied, and you mentioned defining the problem is really important, and then actually essentially applying the toolkit to to solving that problem, especially with say things like cameras and techniques like computer vision. Could you maybe explain to us how you go about actually applying that?
Definitely. That's actually a question that we got asked quite a bit just outside on the booth as well. People asking us, so how do you actually do it? Where does Meraki actually play into it? What do you guys use of it? So we've come up with a little diagram as well. I hope it's up on screen as well. And this is what our process is. And essentially, we've coined it and given it a term and mapped it according, I guess, to a sensory process as well as to what it is when a human brain recognizes and makes sense of stuff. So we've called this the Viana cortex, and that's essentially what we do. So in this scenario, as you can see on screen, we are looking and using the MV cameras or the Meraki cameras essentially as your eyes. So we take the RTSP feeds from the cameras, we take that, we process that through a range of services, which could be either on the edge or the cloud. We've got two options available depending on the use case that we need to track. We process that through services on Viana, and the processing and what happens on that AI perspective comes into that Viana cortex where that's where all the algorithms are placed. So that's where the processing happens, and then the visualization is the output of the data. So that customers can actually take that, make sure that it fits into their outcomes, and make the necessary pivots or human interventions needed to deliver that use case. So that's a total overview of what we do. So we've got the perception stage, of which we work really closely with the Meraki teams, the cognition stage, and then finally the decision stage as well.
That's awesome to get that overview, and it's always exciting to have these conversations with the customers and actually see how they actually apply these tools. We've talked a lot about data today, and I think Charles really highlighted the importance of data in the whole process, and I guess I tried to kind of underpin that conversation also. I was wondering if you could maybe drill into a bit more detail around the platform, and if you could highlight some of the key messages that or takeaways that everybody here attending, both in the room and also on video, should be mindful of.
Definitely. So we've put that into. Oops, sorry, it's not. Okay, awesome. So we've put that into 5 key use cases as well. So it's up on screen. We've essentially, really drilled into what it is to make sense of the data. And I think, we've spoken about this. If any of you were here for the AM session, we talked about it as well, making sure that data is not in isolation. Charles talked about making sure that data made sense and enabled humans. And so we have done that as well. And so one core thing that we do, it's point 2, but I really wanted to focus on that, is making sure that insights that we get are meaningful and addictive at the same time, because we want to make sure that, data is consumed and, continues to be consumed. And I think that's where, I think in Charles' conversation, he talked about having a digital twin, and that's really important to us as well. I think, one thing about having meaningful and addictive insights is to make sure that it's surfaced up in a way that it's consumable for everyone. So, for example, if I was a marketer and I wanted to know what customers were interacting with in my space, that I was able to access the data without having to go through that whole circle of reaching out to business analysts. I had that at my fingertips essentially, because it helps me do my job better without having to wait for things to come through. And so that's what we've done. We've really taken the effort to make an easy, comprehensive dashboard with the right UIs, so that customers could do that, so everybody can do their job better. So that's a key thing that we really focused on. Another thing that we do is what we call anonymous re-identification. So that's, I guess, one of the key value props we always talk about as well.
Absolutely.
To make sure that as we are tracking or anonymous personas as they go about, the store, for example. I'm just going to use retail as a general example because I think it's quite easy to understand retail. We are performing what we call anonymous re-identification. So in our process of going through AI and ML, we've learned really early on that, to basically group and get good insights from a certain space, you actually don't need to do things like facial recognition or anything else. You can actually have a mixture of different data points to add breadth to what you want to basically anonymously monitor. So things like, what you're wearing, for example, James. So if James, say, were to walk into a retail store, we would pick up, say, male age within 20 to 30.
I'll take that.
20 to 30 wearing a green top. He's interacted, say, with a couch, then he's interacted, say, went to the self-serve furniture section, and then ended up at the cafe because he has to wait for his partner, maybe. And that's, his journey. And so we group all of that into personas. And that key value point as well is about anonymously re-identifying someone. So James in our system will not be known as James. He'll actually be given an anonymous token, like a 003. So it'll be 003 with all these data points, walking around the store, understanding, how he's interacting with the space, surfacing that up into data, and then, giving that to marketers or sales reps to understand and cater to, how we should scope out a space, especially if, there's little retail space and we need to maximize that. Some other things as well include things like minimal bandwidth usage, and I'll put ease of deployment together with it as well, because that's really important. So once all your Meraki cameras are set up, we have ready-to-go modules that are available to be loaded straight onto the cameras and deployed that way. So you don't actually have a very lengthy process to do that. We've made it really simple so that anyone can really access the data as effectively and efficiently as possible. And then the last one I know is something else that we're really passionate on.
Yes.
AI on cameras, which is a latest feature in the Meraki ecosystem called Custom CV. And we're really honored as well to be part of the first few beta deployments for it. So essentially what that is, we're able to anonymously track how people interact with spaces and have that straight onto the cameras. So, we don't really need to use, any edge devices. It goes straight on there so that it expands what we can do on the camera. So we're really excited for that, I think.
Yeah, I think that concept in itself, that whole edge AI processing piece, I guess it really opens up the opportunity for customers to deploy these technologies that often had traditional barriers to entry, which I guess is super exciting because that's probably one of the biggest inhibitors is actually getting the technology in place to drive that.
Exactly. So we've been working, I can't really say the customer name right now, but we've been working with, that deployment has actually been rolled out in the US, where we're using that for a specific large multinational coffee company, and we're using that for their drive-thrus. So we're using that to understand make and model of vehicle and how we can help with drive-through processors, so making sure that as people drive through to pick up their coffees, we're keeping wait time low. We're doing stuff like predictive analytics. If someone drives up, say, the office junior comes up to pick 20 coffees for a large board meeting, that, we see that same car come through, we can start, making oat milk ahead of time, or, making, in America they've got half and half. So like making milk for half and half because that order remains consistent. So that's some things that we're working on with Custom CV, which is super cool.
So you've just reminded me, if we think about CV and Custom CV, I know you also do synthetic training and custom model development. And that reminds me, I guess, one of our large postal customers in Australia. So maybe you could share a little bit about that customer and how they're applying your technology to drive success.
Definitely. So I think that's there's a customer that's really close to our hearts, I think, because we've worked on that together in Australia. So this is a customer that we've worked on in Australia. They came to us with very clear business problems and key outcomes that they wanted to achieve. So for this particular postal network, what they came up to us was, hey MeltCX, hey Meraki, we've got a couple of things that we want to achieve. We want to digitize our post office network, or our postal network, and there are additional things that we want to understand. So the first thing that they wanted to understand was how are customers interacting with the idea and concept of parcels, and has that changed with the pandemic? So in Australia, post offices were considered an essential service, so they were open for the whole duration of the lockdowns and everything that happened in kind of Australia and Melbourne, and I'm sure in Singapore and various parts of APJ as well. So they wanted to understand how parcel behavior had changed. Do we want to walk up to a kiosk? Will we rather have human interaction? Or, can we just drop something off a parcel chute? Like, what do people want to do moving forward with parcel? So that was one. The second business problem they wanted to understand was, we've got X amount of floor space, and floor space is becoming more expensive year on year. How can I understand what elements of a postal network or the retail-facing element of the postal network needs to be? So do people want more letters of parcels? Do I need to have a bigger area for passport taking, for vehicle registrations? What can I do? So they wanted to get more information on that. And then the last one was understanding foot traffic, people count, to renegotiate leases, as well as do things like, understand opening hours. Do I need to open on a Saturday or a Sunday, or should I start later and end earlier? What are my best times? So that's what we worked with them on, and I think this customer is really dear to our hearts because they use a wide variety of AI use cases all on that same platform. So if you see on screen here, they use all those use cases that are up there. So they do things with us on that same platform for zone engagement, audience measurement, and content effectiveness. So zone engagement is, essentially allowing customers to understand dwell times, key personas that are interacting in zones, who comes into a postal network retail shop the most, how long do they dwell there? Do I need to expand floor space because of that? So that's one. And then we also do things like content effectiveness, which is really closely linked to digital signage and making sense of what's on the digital signs. So does it, cater to them? Do more people look at Forex ads instead of, passport ads? All of that. So we're really keen on this customer, and they use all of these on that same platform for those outcomes that I mentioned before.
That's awesome. So could we actually see what this platform looks like?
Exactly. So I'm going to walk over to my laptop to give you guys a bit of an overview of what's available. So hopefully we can swap the screen over to the other input. Awesome, so that's come up. So essentially I hope that's big enough. I might make it bigger for everyone. So this is what we meant by making sure, and I know there was a lot of, if you guys were here in the AM session, there was a lot of talk about making sure that user interfaces are really easy to use. Bear in mind, I have a marketing background, so I'm actually not technical, but I can use this platform pretty easily. So all the things that I mentioned before, including things like people counting and zone engagements, I'm going to show you how easy it is to deploy. So for example, if I go here, this is actually one of our regional offices as well, so the team knows that this is happening. I hope that loads up. So essentially I wanted to show you guys how easy it is to basically draw a trip line. For some reason it's not working, I'll come back to that in a tick. Hopefully it loads up. I also wanted to show you guys, this is an extraction of the dashboard that's available. So if you can see on screen here, this is a ready to go dashboard of all the elements that can be anonymously identified and tracked for a space. So this is assuming that it's a retail space. You get things like gender, demographic, ins and outs, total visitors, who's spending time in zones, overcapacity incidents, and best times. One of the key things as well, which I mentioned about the post office network, this one, they love this the most, understanding the top 3 zones and making sure that they were able to maintain those zones, expand those zones, and make sure that they had the best service for those. I'm going to go back here. Awesome, it's loaded up. So if you can see here, this is for a use case for people counting. It's so simple. All you have to do is, once the Meraki camera is up, this is showing the entry. All you have to do is just draw a line. This is a trip line. As you can see, you can label this. You can change the name of it. You can put a doorway to it. And it's also directional, so you can swap it. So this is going into the door. This is coming out of the door, and you can save it. The last one that I wanted to show as well, I'm going to discard change, is how easy it is to do a zone. So for example, this is, sorry, I might give it a while to load. Oh, it's up here. So this is an area, this is our actual test area. If you wanted to start getting some information on zones, all you have to do is just draw a box. You can manipulate it like you would Photoshop, save it, and it starts tracking straight away. So as you can see on screen as well, all our faces are blurred on stream. So we're not doing any identification, and we've got an extensive list of privacy. And if I don't think I've got time to cover it off right now, but if you guys want to know more about what we're doing for privacy, GDPR, please have a chat to us. We deliver this solution in North America as well as in Europe. So we've got a whole set of things ready to go as to how we're dealing, storing, and transacting in data. Awesome.
Thank you, Joy. A fantastic overview of
Yeah.
our portfolio and some of the applications that we've seen in our region where we apply this technology within our customer environments to drive success. We're just about at the end of our time slot for this session. So what we might do is hand back over to the crew and get ready for the next session now.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Joy.
guys.
Really appreciate it. Can I have a round of applause for Joy?
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.